Okay, well, I guess it's time to talk about Lightyear. Finally, I saw the original trailer, which really just felt like a teaser to me. We didn't get much of anything. I kind of liked that about the original trailer. It was all up in the air. It was just this neat-looking sci-fi setting, and we get our characters, and that's kind of it. Just a couple of characters, even at that. We knew that there was going to be some kind of space adventure. There was a lot of mystery around it. There was a lot of curiosity on my end of what this was actually going to be, although I did get a hint of kind of standard contemporary sci-fi action story, and now that we have what they're calling official trailer 2, we get the main premise of the story, more or less, or at the very least, the setup, the situation that our Buzz Lightyear character guy has to deal with in this movie. Well, okay, so he goes on a mission, and he does some stuff, and accidentally time travels, and meets up with a new wacky band of characters, and I assume they're just trying to get home or finish the mission that he originally went out for, I suppose. The character that he was previously paired up with now has this like legacy. I assume she becomes some sort of big Federation leader. I'm just going off of Star Trek standards here. But yeah, I mean, Taika's in here, I guess, because why not? He's buddy with Disney. I'm sure he's picking up some big fat checks for all these voice acting roles. Who else we have in the movie? I'll briefly talk about the casting, I guess. We got Keke Palmer, Chris Evans, who I forgot who that was, Peter Son. I'm not familiar with James Brolin. Sure, why not? Uzo Aduba. We got this trailer. What are the thoughts? What are the feelings about this so far? I mean, obviously, feel free to share yours. I would be interested to hear. I think I did a poll a while back just asking, like, what is the interest level for this movie? Are people excited to see it? Are they feeling kind of hesitant about the whole thing and just waiting to see what happens? And personally, I think it's a pretty interesting moment for Pixar in particular, because in the past we've just had Pixar franchises, like Finding Nemo's technically a franchise, The Incredibles technically a franchise, Toy Story very clearly a franchise, and even Monsters Inc., right? But for the most part, it's just been doing sequels or prequels, whereas this is like a universe expanding thing. It's a Toy Story universe movie, and there's even a chance that this is supposed to be like a sort of Toy Story meta thing, where this is a movie being released in the world of Toy Story, which I think would be a fun angle, although it would probably just have to be tiny little nods to that universe, to that world in this movie without going full meta and like showing Andy walking out of the theater with his new wife or whatever. And it's a big summer movie. They're really betting on this one. The first trailer performed quite well. I'm sure it has tens of millions of views at this point. I'll check on that. Pixar. Okay, we all know Pixar inside and out. That's kind of funny. And for so long, the name of their game was taking very mundane, everyday stuff and elevating it to make it sort of fantastical and interesting and fun. That's Toy Story. That's even Knick Knack. A lot of the other shorts, like just really standard mundane stuff, elevating it to make it really interesting. Inside Out, we just have human emotions, and then it's all of a sudden it's a magical internal world of adventure. Or we have even just Cars, the Cars franchise. There's another one. Is a really standard thing. Transportation instruments. Now they have their own world and everything's more whimsical. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have these instances where Pixar does basically the exact opposite. They take something that is sort of inherently fantastical and they make it more mundane, right? So The Incredibles is a standout example for me. We think of, superheroes as these crazy, wow, they're basically gods, they have all these incredible powers. What would their home life be? Like, what would it be like when a superhero gets into an argument with his wife? Like, taking the fantastical, making it mundane. So it's been switching between the two. Onward is another good example of that approach, of like, taking all this literal fantasy characters and environments and elements and making them closer to our sort of standard everyday suburban existence. With with Lightyear, it definitely falls on that side, I suppose, because the character of Buzz Lightyear, or the toys in the Toy Story movies in general, are an example of the everyday thing that became more interesting and fantastical. And now we're getting one of those toys, more or less, I know it's like probably a different character technically, but being put into what I see as a pretty darn standard sci-fi action movie that we would absolutely just have in the real world. And the fact that this is being made in the real world seems like evidence of that to me. There are already nods to other sci-fi classics in here, and just this story itself honestly doesn't seem super compelling to me. It just seems like blockbuster movie. Also, like, this is a movie that could be done in live action, which is sort of strange again. Like, I look at most of the Pixar movies, Onward, Inside Out, every Toy Story movie. It would be really difficult to execute that stuff in live action and make it look good, to have it executed well, and to be effective. And here, this could just be a live action movie. And especially with the art direction here and how what are essentially human characters are handled, it's still cartoonized, it's still heightened visually, but it is on the side of photorealism. Certainly the lighting is more or less photorealistic in my opinion. So why is kind of the question, and unfortunately the answer is very simple, and that answer has nothing to do with Pixar's outlook or their general shared creative motivation or intentions. It's just that it's a recognizable property. Everybody knows Buzz Lightyear, everybody knows Toy Story. Here it is in what almost feels like a somewhat outdated summer blockbuster movie. Maybe it's supposed to be like, I don't know, homaging the sort of big summer blockbusters of the 90s or early 2000s, or even going back to some of the Spielberg stuff, which is kind of a moment that has passed, hasn't it? It's the superhero movies now. A couple other major studio properties are the things that actually, kind of go gangbusters at the theaters, and that's about it. Even this came up recently with Moonfall from Roland Emmerich, which also felt like one of those older summer blockbuster movies, and it did horribly. So I don't know. I don't see a lot of stuff here in this trailer so far that screams Pixar to me, other than just the incredible skill going into the visuals. Although even there, like, I don't know, it looks fine. I talked about this recently in a video that didn't get all that many views, so I may as well recommend it here, talking about how some recent efforts from DreamWorks and Sony Animations, and even Warner Brothers, if we're being honest, are starting to integrate aspects of 2D art, and that opens up a whole new level of creativity and visual appeal for 3D, CG animation. And it's starting to make Disney and Pixar feel like they're falling behind a little bit, because they're not really doing that at all. Maybe they see it as a trendy thing that's going to be out in a few years, and they don't want to be a part of that. They don't want their movies to age poorly in that way, so they're sticking with just really impressive, like, high horsepower visuals, and that's about it. But here, like, I don't know, I really do think with this one, it's starting to feel like, it's starting to feel like this is going to be one that I sort of forget about pretty soon. And this is something that I think is a pretty commonly shared opinion when it comes to some of the more recent efforts from Pixar, probably mostly from adult fans, is just that, okay, in the moment, they're fun little movies, but then after the fact, they don't seem to have a ton of impact. I've kind of experienced that with Turning Red. I definitely respect that movie a whole lot. I made a whole video talking about the things that I liked about it, but it's not one that stayed with me at all, and, like, fair enough, it's not really made for me. I'm not the target demographic, but is there maybe some truth in this impression? Is that speaking to something real about Pixar, where it's kind of just starting to have an output that's fine, that's just kind of okay? And it's a question that's been around since probably Cars or Cars 2. I think that was definitely the franchise that got people wondering about, is this just the end of the Pixar golden age, where every single movie just seemed like an absolute hit and incredible ideas and fantastic execution? Obviously, they've still continued to do great work. I mean, Toy Story 4 alone is a massive standout standout in terms of quality, fantastic writing, great character work, lovely visuals. But I don't know, especially with their increased output of 2 movies a year? Is it becoming more of a factory? Has it been a factory for a long time? And are we losing something in that transition? Because I'm not coming to this with a really strong argument. This is not an essay. I'm not yelling at you about what the situation is here. I'm just genuinely curious. Are they homogenizing with the larger contemporary big studio film landscape? As part of Disney, it certainly wouldn't be surprising for them to do so. And in my opinion, homogeneity in feature film releases is just plain boring. It's just kind of disappointing. It makes it less interesting to talk about each individual release when you can just say, well, this feels a lot like a Marvel movie. This feels a lot like modern Star Wars stuff. This feels a lot like even certain television shows. That's less interesting to me than original properties, than brand new art styles, than some artistic expression that feels novel. And so far, just based on the 2 trailers we have for Lightyear, I'm not getting many of those ingredients. I'm not detecting them. It could be that they're here somewhere, and I'm just not picking up on those. But I don't know. I would be very curious to hear whether other people feel similarly about this. I don't know. I'm sure it'll perform extremely well at the box office, but in my opinion, this movie, what it ends up being, as opposed to how it performs financially, is a pretty big deal for signaling where Pixar is today and sort of where they're headed and what they're actually trying to do. Maybe we've been too lofty with our understanding and expectations of Pixar this whole time. Maybe we've been kind of hero worshipy about the studio and put it on this massive pedestal when all along it was just doing good work and sometimes breaking new ground, but ultimately just very efficiently making movies that made a bunch of money. It could just be that, and we're putting too much stock into their sort of value and motivations. But this is going to be an interesting moment, for me at least, as someone who's followed Pixar, I mean, like a lot of people, since day one, more or less. Well, at least since the feature films have started coming out from Pixar. That's where I'm at with it currently. As always, I'm very happy to hear perspectives from other people, especially people who have had different feelings than I have about the recent Pixar releases. That would be great to have. And I guess that's about it. Thanks for stopping by.